In March of 1911, the United States Army adopted a pistol. It stayed the standard sidearm of the American fighting man for 74 years, through 2 world wars, Korea, Vietnam. It was not replaced until 1985, and even then it did not really leave. It is still carried by men in uniform today, and it is still built by more companies than I could name in a minute. Now here is the part that ought to stop you. The hottest, most fought-over, most expensive category in American handguns right now, this year, is the double-stack version of that same pistol. Men are standing in line and paying $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 for a gun whose lockwork was drawn up by John Browning before the First World War, before penicillin, before women could vote in this country. And that is not the strange part either. The strange part is that the plain, single-stack version, the original, the one from 1911, is still being sold brand new right now alongside it. So I want to ask a question that I do not think gets asked honestly in this business. Every year there is a crop of new guns. Every year there are lists and rankings and hype and men on camera telling you which ones were worth it. And every year some of them genuinely are good. But if you take the marketing off and look at what is actually inside these things, how much of it is new? I am not the man to tell you which pistol released this spring has the best trigger. I do not review guns I have not put rounds through, and I do not put rounds through much of anything that came out this year. What I can do is tell you what is actually inside the things and where it came from and what that means for the money in your pocket. Because something did get better. Something got dramatically better in the last 40 years, and it changed how well an ordinary man can shoot more than any new pistol ever has. I'm going to tell you what it is at the end, and it is not a gun. Hold that. Start with Browning, since we opened there. What he worked out for that 1911 was not the grip safety or the thumb safety or any of the things people argue about. It was the locking system. A pistol firing a serious cartridge cannot simply have the slide blow back. The pressure is too high, so the barrel and slide have to stay locked together for a moment while the bullet leaves, then come apart. Browning's answer was to tip the barrel. The barrel and slide travel back locked together, then a link and a lug came the chamber end of the barrel downward, it unlocks, and the slide carries on alone. Now go pick up nearly any centerfire pistol made in 2026. A Glock, a Sig, a Smith, a Walther, a Canik, a Turkish gun, a Croatian gun, any of them. Take the slide off and look at what happens when the barrel comes back. It tips, every one of them. It is Browning's idea with the link swapped for a cam surface. 115 years, uncounted engineers, billions of dollars, and nobody has beaten the way that man locked a barrel in 1911. The most modern pistol on any counter in this country is running his lockwork. Take the second thing everybody calls modern, the polymer striker-fired pistol. The Austrian army wanted a new service pistol in the late 70s. A manufacturer named Gaston Glock, a man who made curtain rods, field knives, and entrenching tools, and who had never designed a pistol in his life, built one anyway, and in 1982 it won the trial and became the Austrian P80. 1982. That gun is older than most of the men buying one, and nearly everything that has happened since is refinement, not invention. Better grip texture, better triggers from the factory, higher magazine capacity in the same size package, a slide cut so you can bolt an optic on it. Those are real improvements, and I am not going to sneer at them. But the striker, the polymer frame, the safe action trigger, the tipping Browning barrel underneath, all of that was settled in a room in Austria before most of this audience was born. Now the rifle. Eugene Stoner designed the AR at Armalite in the late 1950s. Colt bought the rights in 1959. The 5.56 became a NATO standard in 1980. Every AR built this year, at every price point, from the $800 gun to the $4,000 gun, is running Stoner's rotating bolt in Stoner's extension, cycled by Stoner's gas system. What changes is the handguard, the muzzle device, the trigger, the coating on the bolt carrier, and how carefully somebody indexed the barrel. Those things are not nothing. A well-built rifle really is better than a poorly built one, and the difference shows up on paper. But it is the same rifle. It has been the same rifle for 65 years. Go to the shotgun and it gets worse, or better, depending on how you look at it. The pump-action shotgun that every man in America recommends for the house is a Victorian invention. Christopher Spencer patented a slide-action shotgun in 1882. Browning drew up the Winchester 1893 and then the 1897, and that gun fought in the trenches of the First World War. The Remington 870 came along in 1950 and has passed 11 million units. The Mossberg 500 arrived in 1961 and is somewhere north of 10 million. Between those two guns, you are looking at more than 20 million shotguns built on a mechanism that a man in a bowler hat would have recognized on sight. Nobody has improved on it because there is nothing left to improve. You push a piece of wood backward and forward, and the gun does the rest, and it works when it is filthy, when it is frozen, and when the man running it has never been trained. Now the bolt action. And this one is my favorite because the credit almost never goes where it belongs. Paul Mauser finalized his rifle action in 1898. 2 locking lugs at the front of the bolt, a claw extractor that grips the case as it leaves the magazine, a gas shield, a 3rd safety lug. That action is the reason a bolt gun is the most accurate practical rifle a man can own. Locking at the front, right behind the cartridge, keeps everything in line. The Winchester Model 70 arrived in 1936, built on that idea. The Remington 700 in 1962, built on a simplified version of it. Every bolt rifle on a rack in this country right now, the fine ones and the $400 ones and the finish ones everybody praises, is a grandchild of a German patent from the year before the turn of the 20th century. And there is one component in all of this that is older than any of them and matters more than any of them, and almost nobody thinks about it at all. The detachable box magazine goes back to James Paris Lee in the 1870s and 80s, the same Lee whose name is on the Lee Enfield. A spring, a follower, a body, and 2 lips at the top bent to release the cartridge at exactly the right instant. That is the entire invention, and it has not changed in 140 years. Here is why I raise it. Ask any armorer, any instructor, anybody who has run a class with 30 students and watched 60 stoppages, what causes malfunctions in a modern firearm. It is almost never the gun. It is the magazine. Bent feed lips from being dropped on concrete or from being stored loaded and hammered by a slide for years. A tired spring, a cracked body, grit in the works. So the part everybody treats as free, the thing that comes in the box, that gets thrown in a bag, stepped on, left in a truck, is the part most likely to fail you. A man will spend $1,200 on a pistol and run it with magazines he has never once inspected, and then blame the pistol. Nomenclature, while we are here, and it matters in this crowd. That is a magazine. A clip is a different object entirely, a strip of metal that holds cartridges together to load them into a magazine, like the ones used with an M1 Garand or a Mauser. 2 different things, and using the wrong word will cost you the room. And then there is what you are actually feeding these guns. The 9mm Luger cartridge was designed in 1902. The .45 ACP came right behind it. The .30-06 was adopted in 1906. The .06 is the year. The .7.62 NATO, which we call the .308, came in 1954. The .22 long rifle dates to 1887, and the 12-gauge shot shell is older than all of them. So the man standing at the counter in 2026 buying the newest thing on the shelf is buying a 115-year-old locking system chambered in a 124-year-old cartridge in a rifle pattern from the Eisenhower administration. I want to be careful here because there is a lazy version of this argument and I do not want to make it. The lazy version says none of it matters and it is all the same and men are fools for buying anything new. That is not true and it is not fair. And before I go further, I owe you the other half of the honest picture, which is that genuine invention has been attempted, repeatedly, with real money and serious engineers behind it. It mostly failed, and how it failed is worth knowing. In the 1960s, a California outfit built the Gyrojet, a pistol that fired small rockets instead of bullets. No chamber pressure to speak of, so the gun could be made of almost nothing. It was a genuine reimagining of what a firearm is. It was also wildly inaccurate, feeble at close range because the rocket had not yet come up to speed, and it died. Far more serious was the caseless rifle. West Germany spent years and a fortune developing a rifle that fired ammunition with no brass case at all, the propellant molded into a solid block around the projectile. No extraction, no ejection, a third less weight to carry, and a rate of fire nothing else could touch. It very nearly went into service around 1990. Then the wall came down, reunification consumed the budget, and the project died with it. Both of those were real attempts to leave Browning and Mauser behind, and neither one is in your safe. That is worth sitting with. It is not that nobody tried. It is that the old answers have proven awfully hard to beat, and the men who bet against them mostly lost. Which is why the honest word for what has happened since is refinement, and refinement deserves its due. And most of that refinement did not come from a gun designer at all. It came out of the machine shop. Understand how a pistol was made in 1960. A man or a machine cut steel one operation at a time, and every operation had a tolerance, and the tolerances stacked up. Getting a barrel to sit in exactly the same place, shot after shot, took hand fitting, which meant a skilled man with files and stones and hours are the most expensive thing in any factory. That is why a target pistol used to cost a fortune. You were not buying better steel, you were buying somebody's time. Then computer-controlled machining arrived, and a shop could cut apart to close tolerance thousands of times in a row without a craftsman standing over it. Then powdered metal parts let small internal pieces be formed nearly to shape instead of cut from a block. Then polymer let the whole frame be molded in one shot identically forever. That is the actual reason a $500 pistol today shoots better than a $1,000 pistol did in my father's day. Not a new idea about how a gun should work. A new idea about how metal gets shaped. The design is Browning's. The precision is a machine tool's. And it is why the gap between cheap and expensive has narrowed so much that the arguments have gotten strange. The budget gun is no longer unreliable. It is reliable and a bit rough. So the money now buys finish, feel, a better trigger, and a name. And men fight about whether that is worth it. That is a very different argument than the one their grandfathers had, which was whether the cheap gun would fire at all. Fit and finish genuinely improved. Triggers that used to require a gunsmith now come out of the box better than most aftermarket work did in 1995. Sights that used to cost $200 extra now ship standard. factory optics cuts. Better metallurgy, better coatings, tighter tolerances at prices that would have been unthinkable 30 years ago. A $500 pistol today will do things a $1,000 pistol could not do in my father's time. That is real. Refinement is not nothing. 100 small improvements to a settled design is how nearly all engineering actually works. But refinement is not invention. And here is where I want to be honest about the business, because I think it explains most of what you see every January. A firearm is a durable good with an absurdly long service life. Kept dry and cleaned, a decent gun will outlive the man who bought it and probably his son. There are rifles from the 1890s still shooting. That is a wonderful thing to own and a terrible thing to sell, because a market cannot survive selling a man one object for his whole life. So the industry does the only thing it can do. It gives you a reason every single year. A new slide cut, a new grip module, a new comp, a new color, a new model number, and a new list, and a new round of hype in January. I do not say that bitterly, and I do not think it is a conspiracy. That is simply what happens in any market for something that does not wear out. But it does have a cost, and the cost lands on you. Because a man who is told every year that the answer is the next purchase eventually stops asking whether the answer might be something he already owns and has not learned to use. All right, here it is. The best gun of 2026 was not made in 2026, and in my judgment, it was not a gun at all. 3 things genuinely changed how well an ordinary man can shoot in the last 40 years. Not one of them is a firearm. All 3 of them bolt on or load in, and every one of them will do more for you than any new pistol on any list this year. The first, and the largest by a wide margin, is the red dot sight. The Swedish company Aimpoint put the first commercial one on the market in 1975. For years, it was a curiosity for hunters. The United States Army did not sign the first military contract for red dot sights until 1997, and they were not really in soldiers' hands until around 2000. Versions small enough to ride on a pistol slide came at the end of that decade. And what it does is not what men think. Iron sights ask you to stack 3 things in one line: rear notch, front post, target, when your eye can only focus sharply on one of them. That is the single hardest thing about learning to shoot a handgun well. It is why beginners plateau, and it gets worse in dim light, worse with age, and worse the moment your heart rate climbs. A dot deletes that problem. You look at the target, where your eyes want to be anyway, and the aiming reference floats out there on it. Nothing to align. Aging eyes that can no longer bring a front sight into focus see a dot perfectly well. That is the most significant change to practical marksmanship in 100 years, and it sat on a shelf from 1975 while everybody argued about calibers. The second thing is the ammunition, and this one is invisible because the box says the same thing it said in 1950. 9mm Luger. Same case, same pressure, same name your grandfather would recognize. But the projectile inside it is not the same object. After the FBI's wounding study at Quantico in 1989 laid out what actually stops a determined man, penetration and enough of it, the industry spent 30 years learning to build a bullet that opens reliably and still reaches a useful depth through clothing, through glass, through bone. They got good at it. And the proof is that in 2014, the FBI went back to 9mm after decades of chasing bigger holes, because the bullets had gotten good enough that caliber stopped being the deciding factor. $20 of the right ammunition does more for you than a $1,000 pistol firing the wrong kind. The third is the light, and it is the most overlooked of all. A weapon light in 1990 was an incandescent bulb throwing a dim yellow circle, and the filament often did not survive the recoil. Today's are far brighter, run for hours on one cell, and shrug off being bolted to a shotgun. In a dark house, you cannot obey the fourth rule, know your target and what lies beyond it, without one. That is the difference between a defender and a man firing at a shape. Look at what those three have in common. None is the gun. All three bolt onto a gun you already own. Every one is a real, measurable change in what a man can do, while 65 years of new rifle models have mostly given us different handguards. And the fourth thing is free, and nobody can sell it to you. Rounds fired. A man with a plain pistol and 5,000 rounds behind him outshoots a man with a $4,000 competition gun and 2 boxes, and it is not close. So my counsel, if you already own a decent gun, is to spend this year's money in this order. A dot if your eyes or your speed need it. Better defensive ammunition and enough plain ammunition to actually practice with. A light. Then instruction from somebody who knows more than you do. And only then a new gun, and only if you can say out loud in one sentence what your current one actually fails at. If you cannot finish that sentence, the gun is not the problem. There is real pleasure in a well-made thing, and I will not scold a man for wanting one. A finely fitted rifle is a good thing in the world. But somewhere out there, a man is on his 4th pistol in 3 years and has never once shot a full box in a single sitting, and he believes he is getting more prepared with every purchase. He is not. He is collecting. Those are 2 different pursuits, and only one of them will be there for him at 3 in the morning. The best gun of 2026 is almost certainly the one already in your house, with a few hundred more rounds through it than it has now. If this was worth your time, stay with me. There is more to say, and I will say it plainly.